Government is facing opposition for controversial proposed changes to gender laws. The transgender community wants to simplify the transitioning process, but hardline feminists claim it's an attack on women's rights. Well, here to talk about their experience is award-winning trans writer and member of the LGBT Advisory Board for the Labour Party, Jake Graf, and Britain's highest-ranking transgender soldier, Hannah Winterbourne. Great to see you both.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's very interesting, all of this, and I want to start really by just getting you both to tell me your individual stories. Jake, perhaps you can talk first about your experience over the last few years.
I mean, I knew from a very, very young age, I knew from about 3 that I was male, and I was very vocal about that from pretty much that age. And when it came to transition, I just decided I didn't really know any other trans people, so I had no one to sort of look to, but I just sort of did the route that I was told by my doctors, which was, you know, you transition, you do the medically transition, top surgery hormones, and then once you've done all that, you apply for your gender recognition certificate. So I did that, and then after, you know, shortly after, I was obviously able to change my birth certificate. However, Hannah had a slightly different experience.
Yeah, my experience, when I was growing up, I didn't quite know who I was. I knew I was different, but I didn't know what that meant to me. And then as I grew a little bit older, I realised that I was transgender. And like Jake, I embarked on my transition, which is as much as about kind of your personal interactions with the world as it is the medical side of life. And then I chose not to have a gender recognition certificate because I think the process is overly bureaucratic and demeaning.
OK, and you met each other and found love, and that's great. And Jake, for people who don't necessarily understand what these proposals are, just in very basic terms, explain what the changes are and what your hopes are that some don't agree with.
I mean, really, all this change is about is being able to change our birth certificate without having to send off paperwork and present ourselves to a faceless board of individuals, none of whom will be transgender, and basically say, you know, am I man enough to have that birth certificate changed? Because it's dehumanising, it's overly bureaucratic, and no one else in the world has to, well, certainly not in the UK, has to say, would you please tell me that I'm a lesbian, or please confirm that I'm a gay man, or please confirm that I'm straight. And yet, for some reason, for the trans community, we're still in that position where we have to be confirmed and stamped before we can go on and live our lives.
So that's what happens now, is it? If you want this to happen, you have to go and speak to a board of people.
So if I want to change my birth certificate now, I have to pay some money, I have to provide evidence that I've become a woman, and then that evidence gets put in front of a panel of people who I've never met, I never get to see, and they decide if I'm woman enough to be a woman, and over what, you know, definition of womanhood, I'm not quite sure, because, you know, everyone's definition of womanhood is very, very different, you know. And then if I fail to get that process, I don't even have a right of appeal. So it's an overly bureaucratic and extremely dehumanising process, all based on what is someone's definition of what a woman or a man is. OK, so it would appear that that's very reasonable, what you want.
Why is it some people are so against this change?
I think that it's become all a bit muddied. There are feminists, not all feminists, there are some certain people, small sections of the community, that believe that it will mean that all of a sudden trans women and trans people are in their spaces, or in their change rooms, or in their toilets. That is not the case. I mean, that has been the case since 2010, I think. So for the last 8 years, because of the Equality Act, we have been in those spaces without incident, without problem. And I think it's important to remember that all this will change, really, in the grand scheme of things, is our right to have this birth certificate amended. I mean, other than that, that's it. And bearing in mind that this right to self-determination, which is what it is, a right to self-determine that I'm a man and Hannah is a woman, is already in place in Ireland, Portugal, Argentina, where else was it? Denmark, yeah. Malta, and it's all working very well there, as it would here. And it's a shame, because it just means that the UK is now slipping behind in those human rights where we always used to set the benchmark.
And just briefly, transgender issues seem to be much more in the mainstream now. We talk quite a lot on this show about the issues that you guys face. I mean, how's life now, Hannah? How do you find day-to-day life?
Well, day-to-day life for me is just normal now. You know, I don't go around, you know, carrying a trans placard wherever I go. I am just myself, and that's what this whole, you know, policy change is looking to doing. It's just giving us the ability to be ourselves openly and freely, and free of discrimination. And, you know, I can understand why people have concerns, because there are people who are using this reform as a vehicle to spread bigotry and hate, and you're hearing lots of arguments from people saying that, you know, this is against women's rights or it's somehow affecting women. It's not. This is simply allowing everyone, whoever they are, male, female, transgender, not transgender, to be themselves openly and free of discrimination, and that's all this is doing.
Seems pretty reasonable to me. Jake, Hannah, thank you very much indeed for explaining that all to us. Appreciate your time. Nice to see you.
Thanks so much.